I'm really excited to see not only having sort of projects all across the stack, as we talk in a little bit, but also I think it's important to see, as we were saying yesterday, we have not only financial institutions across the whole value chain, but we have vendors now collaborating in open source, shifting left that collaboration. This is something that really we'll talk through over the next remaining, I guess, 15, 20 minutes of this keynote. If you want to learn more about OpenGriz and Scalar, Paragraph, Parfund, the implementations of OpenGriz, check out the documentation. We are starting public meetings. Again, pull up your phone. Those are all working QR codes. And you can download the latest release. This is, again, as Ritesh said, already running in production. So I want to spend the next 10 minutes or so before I bring our last speakers to really hone in on some of the areas where in FINOS we are seeing sort of the potential that Mike talked about, you know, that 70% that truly is non-differentiating if you think about the stack. One of the areas where we're seeing the most potential is truly regulatory compliance. And it's both, we talked about yesterday very much about the CDM, the common domain model that is enabling digital regulatory reporting in a much more streamlined way. Many of you might know that we have merged with OS Climate last year. We have a physical risk and resilience project that I think many of you are going to be very interested in. But the area that has really emerged over the last year as a high potential area of collaboration is, as I mentioned before, tech risk. Whether it's OSS, open source supply chain security, whether it is managing cloud risk together, whether it is AI risk most recently. And we have a few projects in that space that I want to walk you through. Before I do that, I always like to start with the why. Some of you might have seen this open letter published earlier in the year by the CISO of JP Morgan. It really talks about the sort of tension, I would say, between innovation and compliance and security. The way I read it is really, we love the innovation that cloud and AI is bringing, but compliance and controls are a shared responsibility model, and there's a lot to do there in terms of making sure that whatever comes from vendors is actually complying with regulation and security, particularly. And so we think that open source, as you'll see across the next two projects that we talk about, can provide a real new avenue for, as we saw in the last presentation, vendors and financial institutions to build these frameworks. One of the most exciting efforts that we've seen in the last year is our AI governance framework. When we started last year, you know, at the beginning of the year in 2024, I went to the board and I said, hey, we need to really do something on AI. And the answer was, yes, compliance, compliance, compliance. That was basically all we could talk about. And it makes sense. Like we talked about yesterday, when an area is not absolutely clearly defined, a great way to use open source is to collaborate and define how the industry perceives or define how an industry should think about safety and compliance in a specific space. And this is absolutely the case of AI. Our governance framework has accelerated so fast this year. We've announced the 1.0 version earlier in the year. At that time, we had, I think, 15 risks and mitigations mapped out, built by a broad consensus of FINOS members, again, across vendors and technology providers, and financial institutions. We are actually already moving to the 2.0 version. And we have added agentic risks now. Actually, I want to send a shout out to Tetrate, our new member who contributed that. I think they're putting out a press release on this today. What's important to me is not only that this is built by financial institution for financial institution, but that it's effectively a win-win. If you're a leader, you have a industry-wide framework that accelerates the way you adopt AI. If you are a practitioner, this doesn't only allow you to better manage risk, but it does it in a way that it maps all of these threats and mitigations are actually mapped to global AI frameworks. As the regulation is quite fragmented right now, as some of that is probably going to be fast evolving, once again, adding a level of indirection solves half of the problems of computer science. And as I said before, I think the unique value proposition here of open source is that, rather than having to, for a vendor, having to comply with a very fragmented set of requirements from different banks, and banks having to sort of impose those requirements across different vendors, we actually can shift left and collaborate together on an open source framework. Which then brings us to sort of the end game, which is going to be training and assurance issued by FINOS. Very excited to announce that today, only 3 months after releasing the 1.0, we are releasing the 2.0 version. I think it was cut on Monday. So you want to check it out. I think there are 23 risks and 23 mitigations there. We will be doing an announcement. We were unable to queue it up as they just, the maintainers so graciously cut it on Monday. Again, take a look at everyone who's contributed. And I want to thank everyone. This has been a very, very fast-moving effort, especially for financial services. As I said, the end game, the way we are able to deliver value is ultimately to think about certifying people and certifying systems against this AI governance framework. The FinOps team talked about training, certification. We have our own training and certification. We have software conformance frameworks for things like FDC3. This is all in the open. And so being able to also sort of assure that in the open, it's something that I think it's a unique differentiator. On this note, if you want to learn more, you can check it out. We actually have so many talks today, all the way from how to adopt the governance framework, how to map it to other projects in FINOS. We are seeing it sort of becoming really a cornerstone of our offering. If you are interested in training and certification, we know a few members have already expressed interest. We are looking actively for design partners. We want to make sure that this is something that gets used in the industry. That's your QR code there in the middle. We'd love to hear from you, especially if you are a financial institution. Now, continuing on the sort of trend of how we manage tech risks together, you'll see some similarities here. For those of you who are familiar with CCC, not the Confidential Computing Consortium, but Common Cloud Controls, this is a project that we've been now working for over a year. It is about taking those threats and mitigations, first and foremost for common cloud services, and actually having them implemented. Implementing not only the controls, not only the tests, but also the infrastructure as code that allows you to stand up those services in a compliant way. Once again, there's maps to global regulations. But I think the unique selling sort of point, the unique difference is that most of these frameworks read regulation and try to map it into code. This actually starts from a cybersecurity perspective. Look at the actual threats and mitigations, codify them, test them in the open, and provide infrastructure as code that then hopefully is going to be mapped back to regulation. That's part of what we want to do in the future. The project has accelerated greatly. especially as earlier this year we announced that the AI governance framework controls will be also implemented in CCC, something that we've dubbed as common controls for AI. So we now have over 22 control sets public. We also have an ecosystem of test frameworks that are building against CCC. Particularly, I want to call out the contribution from an open source project called Prowler, who has built, I think, almost 400 policy checks that are mapped to the CCC framework. In the recent weeks building up to the conference, some of the AI governance framework controls have been mapped into CCC, specifically GenAI, Vector Store, and MLDs. Now, this is a very ambitious project. It really requires collaboration between, once again, vendors and financial institutions. But effectively, it is a win-win. But we do need your help, because the end game, once again, is having a neutral, open, and transparent assurance for the common cloud services across the major cloud service providers. So I hope you'll get engaged. Today we have, again, so many talks around this project. We're really trying to get, in the next sort of, I guess, 6 months, just going to throw it out there, to something that is completely usable for you guys. Check out the controls. If you are a financial institution, bring your experts to the steering committee, the one that blesses these controls. If you are a CSP, a vendor, a security practitioner, you can become a maintainer, you can participate to the project. We'd love to see you showing up there. Now, this is a relatively new project that I want to touch upon that is really becoming the glue across all of our sort of controls and tech risk efforts. This project was born out of one of our SIGs, the DevOps automation. It's actually a technology that was originally envisioned at Morgan Stanley, but they decided to bring it to FINOS to make it an industry standard. This project is called CALM. It's the Common Architecture Language Model. When I first saw this project, I was like, why do we need another language? Why do we need another? Are we back to the rational rows times and drawing architectures? And then, as I was talking to the team, it became immediately clear that I had no idea how software is brought to production in a bank. I'm like, it was immediately clear that by having a common architecture language model that could express not only the components and the policies, but also the controls of each of those components, you can get architectures pre-approved, and then every change since then will be much faster and get sort of your time to production from months to weeks or even less. Not only so, and I love, by the way, Mike, I think is not here anymore, but I took that from one of his LinkedIn posts. Not only this, again, allows standardizing the architecture, shifting left architecture validation and compliance checks, making sure that you catch potential security issues early or deviations from organizational standards and policies. But as far as FINOS goes, this is truly becoming the glue for many of our controls efforts. We talked about AI governance. We talked about common cloud controls. There is a super interesting new effort developing around SDLC controls. CALM could well become the connector that brings these projects together. So where are we today with CALM? The 1.0 was out earlier this year. If you look at that article that I just showed, it goes quite in detail. We have growing industry adoption, again, not as surfaced as we would like it to be, We know that there's way more adoption than anyone who is willing to speak publicly about it, so that's something that you can come and talk to me if you're interested to do a case study or a blog post about. But it's already, again, production ready. At Morgan Stanley, this is underpinning over 2,000 application deployments now. And I guess at the time of the article, I'm sure if you talk to the maintainers who will be here, there's a project booth, they'll tell you that I would assume this has grown. I'm also very excited to see a second contributing org to the project, who just contributed a new visualizer. Again, Tedred has been a great new member of FINOS and contributor. So if you want to learn more about Calm, there are public meetings out there. There's a quick start guide. There's actually good first issues out there. So besides all of that, make sure that you go talk to the team. The team is here en masse. I think they have a project booth. I think there's a demo, whether it's yesterday or today, but otherwise you can go back to yesterday. This is a very exciting project, and as I walk the floors, this is one of the ones that is really making strides. Now, talking about architecture. Okay, this is not built in Calm, just let me disclaim it, but I think it's useful to start looking as the FINOS landscape grows to really show all the projects that this is not a comprehensive view of all the projects in FINOS. But I think it's important to start seeing how across the stack, going back to what Mike was saying before, we are really starting to build a potential blueprint for an open core that we can all collaborate on. And it's not only open source, but openly governed under FINOS. You heard about the compute standards and frameworks that we have. We also have HTC Grid that was contributed by AWS last year. We have open data. Recently, also data sets, synthetic data was contributed to FINOS. All the way to modelization and data modeling. We have 3 frameworks there, Morphir, Legend, and Rune. Now we have FluxNova as really the orchestration layer and process automation. Obviously, the part that I'm mostly excited about is the work that is happening in AI innovation. We haven't talked much about it, but in our FINOS labs over the last year, as we ran many hackathons, as I said yesterday, we created over 150 repositories where folks are experimenting on AI use cases for financial services. All of that, as you see on the right, wrapped in strong industry-wide agreed frameworks of controls that, again, we can then apply to every of these projects. So I hope that gives you kind of the extent of where FINOS is and where FINOS could go from here.